Guys, so in this video I'll show you kind of just the general idea for after you've chosen whichever storyboards, those four that you want to do for the next project, how to kind of make them larger and start sketching over them. So here's some that I sketched digitally. So some of you guys sketched them digitally, some of you guys sketched them on pencil and paper. So I'll show you a pencil and paper version next, but this is a version if you did it on digitally. So here's my sketch. I'm going to do this one of the skateboarder. So first, as you see, my frames are on their own layer, and then so is the artwork. Okay, so I just want to merge these down, merge these layers so the frame and the person is on, and the drawing is on one layer. So what you saw there, I just right-click this frame or that layer and say merge down. So now those are two. Just one layer there. And I set this up as an 8.5 by 11 document, 300 DPI there. So I'm going to select this one. So I'm going to grab my rectangular selection tool and draw around it. And I'm just going to copy this. So hit Command C and then come over here and hit Command V. So here it is. So now I can switch to my move tool. Move this around wherever I want it, but I want to make this bigger. So the idea is that you sketch your thumbnails very small. You worry about the basic shapes, not about details. And now we're going to draw it larger, clean it up, add details and things like that. So now I want to just make it bigger, so I'm going to hit Command T. So Command T allows you to transform either a selection or an entire layer. So that's just going to allow this entire selection to be moved around. Now I can make this a bigger size here. And once you're done, you have to get rid of these little kind of the transform selection where you're allowed to make this bigger and smaller, and just hit enter. Now it's ready to draw on top of. Okay, but I want to actually change the color of this so it's blue, so when I draw over it, it's a different color. So I'm going to go to Image, Adjustments, Image Adjustments, Channel Mixer. Okay, so this will allow me to change the color of this. So I'm just, for the output channel, I'm going to go to blue. I want to change this into a blue line artwork. Turn that up all the way and then turn up the constant. Okay, and that changes it to blue. This is kind of a darker blue. I want it to be a little bit lighter, so I'm going to go to Image, Adjustments, Hue Saturation. This doesn't really matter. This is just kind of my personal preference. I like a little bit of a cooler blue, and I want it just a little bit lighter. Okay, so now I'm going to rename this layer, call it Thumbnail or Rough Sketch or Storyboard. I'm going to lock it so I don't accidentally draw on that layer. Make a new layer and call this Pencil Drawing. Okay. So I'm going to switch to my brush tool, and I'm just going to use this basic hard round pressure size brush. If you want to use one of those other ones I showed you, one of these pencil ones, that's fine, but this one is just really basic and it will pretty much do what I need. So now the entire composition is maintained, which is very helpful for me. So I can just start to trace over these shapes, add details, and make it a little nicer. So this one was based off a photo, so now would be a good time to grab that reference photo. If you have it, definitely grab that reference photo. I'm not sure where my reference photo is, so I'll kind of just make this up as I go along. But I used the reference photo to get the pose in the first place for the thumbnail sketch, so that will kind of help me there. So you have to decide when and where is best to use those reference photos for you. At some point you'll need to use them, so maybe you use them when you're doing your thumbnails more, maybe you do it more when you're worried about that final artwork. But if you are using that reference photo, again, don't worry about copying that photo exactly. You're getting a general idea, using it for inspiration, using it to help you draw parts of the drawings that are difficult that you don't necessarily know how to draw. You can move your canvas around like this. If you hold spacebar, notice my cursor turns to a hand, and I can then move this around however I want. I like to kind of exaggerate these wheels here. Helps give it a sense of motion. So try not to zoom in too much, and only when you need to work on those smaller details. Facial expressions, hands, things like that. But if you zoom in too much, you kind of lose track of your overall composition. So kind of staying right about there will work. If you do want to draw straight lines, there's a couple different ways to do it. I usually just use a method where you click once, and then if you hold shift, click again, it just connects it with a straight line. So same here, I'll click there, hold shift, and do that. You also have the line tool. Where is that? Oh, down here. It's the letter U. That's how I switched to it. So line tool is U. But if you want to use this, you can use this for drawing straight lines. Just make sure it's set here on pixels. Okay, you don't want it to be making a shape or a path. You want it to make actual pixels on your artwork. And you can control the thickness by the weight. So 6, yeah, that's probably better for mine here. But if you use this tool too much, it's going to look overly rigid and not like it's drawn by hand. I'm just erasing this little part right here. So as you notice, this one here, you still kind of get a little bit of that thick thin on there. When you use that line tool, you don't get any of that. And my brush just got messed up for some reason. There it goes. But sometimes it will glitch out like that, and I lose pressure sensitivity. I don't know why that happens, but it does. Let's just have this go. So as you can see, this is kind of a more action-oriented illustration. I wanted to get a sense of motion in here. So I have a Dutch tilt on here, so everything's put on a diagonal. Diagonals will always make things have a sense of motion and action in them. And then I just kind of turn off that underlayer as I'm working to see how it's looking. Yeah. So I should probably grab some reference for some buildings, kind of see what the window patterns may look like. Here's a tip. So for rotation, I hit R, and it switches to the rotation tool. This can be nice so you can rotate your panel. It rotates the entire canvas there. Should make it easier when you need to draw things at certain angles. And if you want it to lock into that original straight up and down, hold shift and it will kind of lock to each one of those increments of rotation. Let's do this kind of sun shape. I want to draw this as a perfect circle, so I'll show you guys how to do that. Go over here to your elliptical marquee tool. I want to try and get a circle that is close to this. I can adjust it after I create it too, so that should be fine. Something like that. And what I can do is tell Photoshop to draw a line right around that selection that I've done. So I'm going to go to Select, Select, what did I do here? How do I do that? Alright, well here's one way to do it. I'll fill it all with black there, so it's on its own layer. And then I can make this selection just a little bit smaller. Select, modify, contract. So that means it's going to make the selection slightly smaller by however many pixels. So I'll try 4. And now I'm just going to delete what's in the selection. So just hit backspace. Now I'll hit deselect, Command D, and now I'm left with just a nice little circle there. So now since this is on its own layer, I can move this around, get it exactly where I want it, and transform it. So I'm going to hit Command T again, make that just slightly bigger. Hit Enter. And now I will come in and erase that little part that overlaps. So you can also change whatever brush you have for your eraser. I have mine as the hard round pressure size there. Turn that off. There we go. And I can now merge this down so it's right click it and say merge down. So now it's part of that pencil drawing layer. So this is getting pretty close for just for this demo here. You want to put some dark blacks in there somewhere. So usually on your focal point you want some dark blacks. So I'll just make his hair dark here. Maybe make these pants dark as well. So just those dark values will get a lot of attention. So usually putting them on your focal point and in strategic places to move your eye around the composition. Give him some sideburns here, a little more unique look. Running low on batteries here. Put in some clouds to get some organic shapes in there. All right, so that's pretty much. Then eventually you'll want to just turn off that lower layer and start to just fill in and look at the drawing itself. So for this project, they don't need to be super finished. I want you guys more to practice this process and get used to that part of it rather than having a perfectly finished, clean looking piece. Just get used to that process of adding color to it as you draw. Oh, one more thing. So I can also draw straight lines by holding Shift and drawing a line, but that will only go at vertical or horizontal angles. But it is a nice way. Actually, let me do that on its own layer. So then you'll see when I draw outside of the frame, what I'm going to do is just drop some white in this section. So switch to my paint bucket tool, suck up this color, holding Option, gets the little eyedropper, and I'll just drop some white in there. Now that just gives me a little bit better idea of how it's going to look. So kind of an action-oriented scene, so I'll show you next how I'll add some color to this. Oh, one last thing. As you're working, image rotation, flip canvas horizontal. So do this as you're working from time to time. This is a good way to, I'm also going to lock that frame layer and name that frame. It helps you see mistakes in your drawings by flipping it horizontally. So it'll allow you to see little mistakes or errors and just kind of lets you see your work in a new light. His hands looks kind of weird. So I do this, I'll just go back and forth as I'm working so I can see Basically if my composition's working, if it needs anything. I think I'm just going to put some very simple silhouette buildings back here. Give that idea of the cityscape behind him. Alright, so that's probably looking good here. I could put more details in these windows, but probably don't need to do that on this this project. Some more dark values in those pants. That really will help it to pop off there. Yeah, so that's probably good. The next video I'll add some color to this and show you guys how to do that.